Good morning, everyone. I'm Dara Monifa Cooper, your communications specialist with Southern SARE. That's a Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program. And we have a not very long, very compact webinar for you today about our graduate student grants. And our grant manager for that particular program, Candace Pollock Moore, will be facilitating this. And I'll be here to monitor the chat. We do also have some outreach staff on with us, just listening in, and others that have been with the SARE program from before. So this webinar is to provide you some clarification about the key components of our SARE proposal when you're writing for the graduate student grant, and just to give the applicants some ideas of what they should pay attention to. So I'm going to go ahead and let Candace do the presentation first, and then we'll handle question and answer afterwards. It will be recorded. It is being recorded and will be shared after the presentation as well as on social media. So any questions you can go ahead and put in the chat. And again, Q&A will be after the presentation. Go ahead, Candace.
Thanks, Dara. Good morning, everyone. As Dara said, my name is Candace Pollock Moore. I'm with the Southern Region SARE program. I'm based out of University of Georgia in Griffin, Georgia. I am the grant manager for the graduate student grant. Just to give you a little bit of background on the SARE program for those who may not be entirely familiar with SARE. The SARE program stands for Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education. We are a USDA funded grants program that focuses on sustainable agriculture. We've been around since 1988, and we provide grant opportunities to researchers, graduate students, farmers, nonprofit organizations, and others in the community who are interested in furthering sustainable agriculture. And so, of course, one of the grants that we do offer is grants for graduate students. We've been offering those particular grants to graduate students since 2000. And this presentation is just going to give you a little bit of information on applying for a graduate student grant. And I will give the presentation, and then we can do a Q&A session afterward. So like I said, we offer graduate student grants for master's and PhD students who are enrolled at accredited universities and colleges in the Southern region. And this is specifically designed for students who are interested in conducting sustainable agriculture research. Master's and PhD students who are enrolled in universities can be enrolled in land-grant universities in the Southern region. And when we say land-grant, we mean those universities that are designated as 1862, 1890, or 1994 universities. And we also accept proposals from students who are enrolled in other colleges and universities across the Southern region. The call for proposals for the graduate student grants are open right now. They generally open in early February. They have a deadline of May. So this year, I think the deadline is May 10th. And we go through a review and a selection process, which I'll touch on a little bit later on. And proposals that are selected for funding are notified in August, with the projects officially starting on September 1st. So with graduate student grants, for students who are interested in applying, an applicant may only receive one graduate student grant during his or her degree program. So what I mean by that is, if you're in a master's degree, you can only apply for one graduate student grant. Then once you graduate from your master's program, and if you move into a PhD program, you can come back to SARE and you can apply for a graduate student grant in your PhD program. But then you're only allowed to apply for one graduate student grant in that program as well. This year, we've increased our funding amount for graduate student grants. In the past, it was $16,500 for 2 years of research. This year, we've increased it to $22,000. I'll go back on that. I don't know why it's doing that. So I'm sorry. So funding, we've increased funding this year to $22,000. for 2 years of research. All of our grants, including our graduate student grants, are reimbursable through invoice submission of allowable expenses throughout the life of the grant project. The graduate student grant can only be used by the student who submitted the proposal and was awarded the proposal. So I'll touch a little bit on the process of what you would need to do if that particular graduate student were to leave the program or graduate early. For now, just that particular information, graduate students who are awarded the proposal, that particular graduate student generally should be the one that completes the grant project. As I mentioned, funds are provided by reimbursement of allowable expenses. We do not require matching funds. And then the focus areas just kind of gives you an idea of the types of projects that we look for in areas of sustainable agriculture for graduate student grants. So this kind of helps you with determining if your idea fits in with the SSARE program or not, just those specific focus areas. And of course, technology, that also includes up and coming, what we consider hot topic, sustainable ag projects such as automation, AI, deep learning, things of that nature, because we're starting to see some of that come through the SSARE program. So that would fit under the technology area. So one of a couple of the questions that we do get from folks is, why should you apply for a SSARE grant? And specifically for the graduate students, the SSARE program is one of the few programs in the country that offers a grant specifically for graduate students, and specifically a grant that focuses just on sustainable agriculture research. So from that standpoint, it is a really popular grant program with graduate students who are interested in that area. And just in general, graduate students applying for a grant, with the SSARE program or with any other grant program, it introduces the graduate student to grant writing, because generally when you get into your graduate program, that it's in most cases, and there are exceptions, but in most cases, it's really the first time that you're really being introduced to having to write a grant. So it sets you up in your academic career in the future for writing a grant, and the information that's entailed in a grant proposal, and having to meet deadlines, and just that whole process of grant writing and grant submission. The SSARE Graduate Student Grant Program introduces students to sustainable agriculture principles. I don't know why my slides are doing this, but they keep advancing forward on their own. It introduces students to sustainable agriculture principles and applicable research for ag producers. So what we mean by that is, within the SSARE program, the whole purpose of the SSARE program is to provide applicable, practical, sustainable ag solutions that farmers can apply to their situation, whether it's in their field or it's in a marketing standpoint. So the graduate student grants help provide that applicable research that farmers can apply directly to their own farming situations. It helps build a portfolio of published works. So it helps build your portfolio of published journal articles, helps build a relationship between students, researchers, the farmers, and with the SSARE program. A lot of times, graduate students who receive graduate student grants and move on into postdoc and then assistant professor positions come back to the SSARE program, either to apply for other SSARE grants for their own research or to mentor graduate students under their program through the graduate student program. And so in that sense, it helps maintain an engagement with the SSARE program as students advance in their careers. So if you haven't downloaded the call for proposal on our website already for the Graduate Student Grant Program, this slide just kind of gives you a breakdown of the sections in the call for proposal. So it's a pretty, I would say, a pretty simple, straightforward proposal of basic information, the body of your proposal, your budget, and your signature sheet. So with basic information, what we're looking for your project title, we're looking for the contact information for the graduate student and for the principal investigator. And when the PI, the proposal cannot be the graduate student. So the PI is generally the major professor or the advisor that's advising the graduate student, or the graduate student can select another researcher who can serve as a PI on the project. We have institutional, we're asking for contact information for institutional administrative contacts. So those individuals who have administrative authority, and then who also have financial authority, those individuals who would be managing grants, the financing aspect of your grants in your grants and contracts office. The state where your project is taking place, the type of institution where you are located. So when we mean by type of institution, we mean what kind of university are you with? Are you with an 1862? Are you with an 1890? Are you with a 1994? Are you with another college or university? In rare cases, we do have USDA research branches like ARS who will work with a graduate student on a project, and so we do have the USDA government institution designation listed there as well. Project start and end dates. So graduate student grants are generally 2-year projects. So we ask for the start date of your project, which is always going to be September 1st of every year, and then the end date of your project, which is 2 years from the ending of your project. The body of the proposal is what we call the meat of your project. So this is the opportunity for you to tell us about the problem of what you're facing, which is explained in your abstract, the solution to the problem, and how you're going to go about conducting the research to measure the results of your project. So your objectives, your relevance to sustainable agriculture, how is this relevant to sustainability? Your approaches and your methods is your experimental design. And your timetable is a timeline of when you're going to be conducting your work from start to finish. Your cited literature is the published works that support the justification for why you want to conduct the research project and why you need to conduct the research project. Your budget and your budget narrative. The budget is a breakdown of the items that you need for conducting your project. And the signature sheet, which is what we need from your university in order to officially contract your grant. So this slide here gives you a listing of allowable budget items on a graduate student grant. So this list is also available on our website and in the call for proposal. So most of the allowable items are specifically related to your need to conduct the research project. So your materials and supplies for conducting your research, which could also include, sampling, if you need to do lab sampling, data analysis. You are allowed to purchase equipment for items that you feel that you need to conduct your research project, only if the university does not have that equipment already available to you. As an option, you can also rent the equipment. Temporary irrigation and movable fencing can be used for your project if you have a research project where that is required. You can purchase livestock or bees for your project, but again, only if the university does not have those animals available to you for your project. And I will say that once, if you do purchase livestock or bees, or purchase any kind of equipment related to your project, once your project ends, that equipment and those animals become the property of the university. We allow graduate student labor on the project up to 50% of the total amount. And we also allow general labor. So if you need to hire somebody like a statistician, if you want to pull in an undergraduate student, a lab technician, somebody just a general labor, that is capped at 15% of the total grant project. Special texts that you normally wouldn't be able to access through normal means. Travel and per diem, so if you need to travel to your research site, or if you're conducting an outreach project and you need to travel to your outreach project, we do reimburse for travel and per diem meals related to that, and that's all centered around the current government per diem costs. Food and refreshments, if you're conducting outreach, if you're doing a social science project and you are doing, let's say, focus groups or that sort of nature, and you want to offer food and refreshments related to that, that's allowable. And then we do encourage students to travel to at least one conference, generally in the region, but you can go out of your region to present the results of your research to others in academia. And the cost of the conference cannot exceed $1,000, including registration. Non-allowable budget expenses, this is also listed in the call for proposals. Stipends and payment of tuition is not allowed, so this means that if the graduate student is getting paid through the university outside of the work that they would be doing with the graduate student grant, it's not an allowable cost. You cannot use the graduate student grant for those funds. A lot of times the graduate student will use the graduate student grant for their thesis or their dissertation, which is fine, but you can't use funds to actually prepare that thesis or dissertation. Publication cost of journal articles is not allowed, so we encourage graduate students to get their work published, but the publication cost for publishing that journal is not an allowable cost through the grant program. Cannot buy classroom books. The salary of the major advisor on the PI on the project is not allowable. The graduate student grants are intended for graduate students to be conducting the work on the project, so the 50% salary for the graduate student is what we want to see. Permanent capital improvements. So if we talk about things like installing greenhouses or hoop houses, purchasing of any kind of a building, permanent fencing, permanent irrigation systems, anything of that nature that would be related to capital investments in any kind of situation is not allowable. Participant incentives, if you are doing a social science project, let's just say as an example, and you're wanting to conduct a survey or a focus group of farmers, and you want to pay them, okay, this is kind of hard to explain. You can pay them, let's just say like a gift card or cash to conduct the survey, participate in the focus group, but so they have to be actually doing something relating to the grant project. You can't offer them an incentive just to show up for something. I mean, they have to be doing something related to the grant project, like filling out a survey or sitting around and having a focus group discussion, those sorts of things. Promotional items such as giveaways, pens, bags, anything that would be considered an incentive to get your participants to act on participating in your project is not an allowable cost. International travel is not allowed, and breakfasts are not allowed in any capacity. So you can offer refreshments, you could offer a lunch, but breakfasts are not allowed. So the big thing about SSARE grants is that we require an outreach component to a SSARE grant project, which means that we want the applicant to be sharing the results of the work to farmers and others in the community with regards to sustainable agriculture. With the graduate student grant, we don't require an outreach plan, but we do encourage it, and in many cases it is expected. So outreach, you can do an outreach which could include a field day. You could do any kind of of the development of publications. Let's just say if you want to develop an extension publication or a fact sheet, you can do videos. You can develop any kind of virtual resources. You could do event presentations, so you can go to other presentations other than like an academic conference and give a presentation on your research. So organic conferences or any other sustainable ag conference in the region, you can do that. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, at the minimum, students should be presenting their project results at an academic conference. So here's some tips for submitting. Graduate student grants are extremely competitive. We always get more proposals every year than we have funding to provide. Last year, for example, we received 102 proposals and we funded 23 projects. We get a lot of good graduate student grant projects. So it really is hard to make the funding decisions. But our budget really is the restriction on our ability to be able to fund more projects. So when it comes to graduate student grant proposals, you really want to have a really well-written proposal that really focuses on sustainable agriculture. So you have to really think about the relevance to sustainable ag. And you know, you can pull in a hot topic subject in sustainable agriculture, something that's up and coming that hasn't really been studied too much yet, something that's really innovative. What we're really looking for are unique, innovative, sustainable ag projects that are really going to move the needle for not only researchers, but for farmers and others in the ag community in areas of sustainability. So when we say moving the needle, you know, we're talking about when you're looking at your project, is it something that is really going to be really innovative, or is it something that is just sort of a band-aid to conventional agriculture? So when we say a band-aid to conventional agriculture, are we talking about just research that really is making conventional agriculture in some ways less, a little bit more sustainable, but it's just making it less conventional. But at the end of the day, it's still not really moving the needle in terms of really being innovative from a sustainable ag standpoint. Those are the kinds of things that we're really looking for. Does your idea fit in with SSARE? If you're not sure, feel free to reach out. You can email me or call me, and we can sit down and talk about your idea and how it fits in with the SSARE program, and I can provide you with some guidance on that. We really encourage applicants to follow the instructions in the call for proposals. Everything that you need to apply for the grant is in the call. The application process is all online, so once you're ready to apply, you're just going to create your account in the SSARE grant management system at projects.sare.org. And the online application mirrors the paper call. So you can go ahead and put your application together in advance. You can go ahead and put your application together in advance, and then when you're ready to apply, you just go ahead and you can just generally cut and paste most of the information from your paper call into the online call. We want you to thoroughly research your idea before applying. So we're looking at, like I said, a well-written proposal that really has a strong statement of your problem, clear goals and objectives, a really well-written experimental design, making sure that your research methods are going to align with your objectives. And then also when you're doing your budget, you want your budget to be realistic in terms of your expenses. You want to have a balanced budget. So for example, you don't want your budget to be all salary and very little materials and supplies. You really want to have a little bit of everything. So you want a little bit of your salary, you want a little bit of, the budget for your materials and supplies, a little bit of outreach, a little bit of travel, just so that the reviewers can see, just how well everything is laid out in your proposal with regards to your budget and how it lines up with everything that you're needing to do to conduct your project in your research methods. Don't wait until the last minute to begin your proposal. We tell researchers and other applicants all the time on this. I mean, there could be technological glitches. There could be, you could have a delay with regards to not being able to log into the system on time to upload your proposal. We've had situations where we've had applicants that have waited till the last minute and they were in the middle of a storm, and the storm knocked out their internet service and they couldn't get their proposal in on time because of that. So it's little things like that that just kind of creep up on you that you don't expect, and you're rushing at the last minute to get your proposal in. And the proposal time is 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And then once that time hits, then the system automatically closes. And so you really want to get your proposal in well in advance of that. We ask you to have clear and simple writing in your proposal, so avoid a lot of jargon. I know that a lot of it is scientific in nature, but like if you don't use a whole lot of acronyms, spell your acronyms out. Make sure you have somebody proofread your proposal so that you can clean up your typos and grammatical errors. Technical reviewers really key into those sorts of things. And to them, seeing those kinds of things with an application really says to them that the applicant really didn't take time to put their proposal together. They really didn't take time to proofread their proposal. And sometimes that's a knock on the applicant with regards to the proposal itself. Think about how your project is going to benefit the farmer in terms of your results. So like I said, a lot of times for most of the SSARE grants, the ultimate goal is to have results that are relevant to farmers and results that farmers can apply in their own farming situations with regards to sustainability. So whether you're in a lab, if your project is lab-based or it's field-based, you want to think about how the results are going to benefit a farmer in that particular situation. Now, we do have situations where research graduate students, their work is lab-based and the work may not be ready yet for field research, which is fine. But in your proposal, you want to talk about where the future of that research is going. So with the lab work, you might want to explain for future outcomes, this is lab-based work, but it does have applicability to the field, and this is how I see the future of this work in the lab being applied to a field situation that a farmer can use. So those are the types of things that you can think about that'll help strengthen your proposal and help make your proposal competitive and be able to compete against a lot of the other proposals that are being submitted. This gives you a little bit of information on how your proposal is reviewed. The review is a two-step process. So once the proposal deadline closes, proposals are assigned to technical reviewers, which are generally researchers and extension specialists and government researchers throughout the southern region, who are paired to proposals based on area of expertise. And they review proposals on the technical aspects of the proposal. So the soundness of the approaches and methods, the time frame of your proposal. Would they feel that the time frame that you have laid out in your proposal Is it realistic for you to be able to complete your project within 2 years? They look at your budget, they look for non-allowable costs, they look at the qualifications of both the graduate student and the PI in determining if they feel that the graduate student is qualified to conduct the work that they're proposing. They look at the technical and the scientific merit of the proposal and the relevance to sustainable agriculture. And then once those technical reviewers review the proposals are scored on based on a range of 1 to 4. One not fundable, 2 revise and resubmit, 3 fundable, 4 high priority. And then once those proposals are scored, then they move to the next stage within a subcommittee of our administrative council called the Project Review Committee. Now, our administrative council is the governing body of our SSARE program, so they ultimately make the funding decisions of all of the grants that we do offer, and the administrative council is made up of a cross-section of sustainable agriculture experts and researchers across the region. And within the administrative council, we have subcommittees, and the project review committee is a subcommittee of the administrative council, which reviews graduate student grants. So they take the high scoring projects of the graduate student grants and evaluate the technical reviewer comments. And then based on that information, they make final project selections. The the selected proposals are presented to, and then they're voted in by the full administrative council during our summer administrative meeting, which is generally end of July, beginning of August timeframe. And then shortly after that, applicants are notified by email of the status of their application, whether they've been funded or not funded. And if awarded, then applicants receive further correspondence. All applicants, whether they're funded or not funded, do receive the comments from the technical reviewers and the comments from the project review committee. So they can either strengthen their research project if they've been funded, or if they have not been funded and they are still within their program the following year, they can take those comments and strengthen their proposal and reapply for the next grant cycle. And then, as I said earlier, the project start date for all graduate student grants is always September 1st. So these are just some of the frequently asked questions that I get when I'm working with graduate students on projects. So this just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of just some of the more common questions. I do get a lot of questions, either phone calls or emails of this is my idea, does it fit in with SSARE? And then, like I said, I sit down and I'll work with the graduate student to talk a little bit about how their project fits in with the SSARE program. If it doesn't quite fit in with the SSARE program, then I give them some guidance and how they can make changes for it to fit a little bit better into the SSARE program with regards to sustainability. Are international students allowed to apply? Yes, as long as international students are enrolled full-time in accredited institutions or colleges throughout the southern region, they are allowed to apply for graduate student grants. And this is a big one. Can projects be just for 1 year? Graduate student grants are 2-year projects, and the reason why we keep them at 2-year projects is because we like to see not graduate students get applicable, replicable data from 2 years. So it's hard to get that kind of data with just a 1-year project. And then the reason why also is because, you know, you want to be able to move forward with the research, whether you're continuing on with that that work in your program or someone else picks up that work. Again, it has to be good data that can be applied in a field situation that ultimately a farmer would be able to apply to his or her field or his or her farming situation. Now that being said, we do accept 1-year projects. It's rare, but we will accept proposals that are just one-year projects, because we do understand that graduate students they might be, they might only have 1 year left of their degree program and they want to be able to get a research project in. That's great. The only thing I'll say with that, though, is like I said before, the graduate student needs to be the one to complete the project. So if you were to separate from the university or leave your degree program before that graduate student project ends, then the PI has to find another graduate student in order to complete the project. And if they can't do that, then the grant project is terminated, because the graduate student project is designed for the graduate student. So when the graduate student grants are funded, the funding goes to the university that the graduate student is enrolled in. So if the graduate student leaves the program, they cannot take the research project with them. So it stays with the university. That's why we really encourage 2-year projects instead of 1-year projects. But if you do submit a 1-year project and you do get funded, just be sure to complete the project before, within that year time frame before you separate or graduate from your program. And then that, of course, that flows into the next question that I have of what happens if the student separates or leaves. And then, like I said, the SSARE requires that the principal investigator identifies another graduate student to continue on with the project. Can the graduate student submit the proposal? Yes, the graduate student can create the account in the online system and submit the proposal. And in fact, we actually encourage it, because that's giving the graduate student the opportunity to be able to write the proposal. We do allow indirect costs. This goes back to the budget, which is limited to 10% of total direct funds. So your budget items plus your indirect costs cannot exceed $22,000. And then this just kind of gives you an idea of what happens in the process when a graduate student is funded a SSARE grant. Applicants are notified by email of funding status. Then after that process, the proposal goes through a budget review process with our staff. We have a grants assistant and an associate accountant who sits down and reviews those budgets to make sure that the budget items that are being asked for fall under allowable budget items. And one of the things that a graduate student, and we require this of all of our grant projects, but the graduate student, for your budget items, you provided a detailed justification of each of your budget item, explaining why you need that item to conduct your research project. So if you have a whole list of materials and supplies, you have to sit down and break out those costs in your justification and itemize all of those costs so that the SSARE staff can take the budget justification and compare it to your budget item so that they have a clearer picture of the type of budget items that you're asking for. If there are any revisions that need to be made to your budget for whatever reason, then the SSARE staff will be working with the graduate student and the PI directly on those budget revisions. Once the budget revisions are made and the budget's approved, then the proposal moves forward for contracting with the University of Georgia sponsored projects. This process could take several months because your project is not the only project that actually is being contracted with the University of Georgia. I mean, UGA sponsored projects, contracts, grants for all grant projects across the entire university. So the SSARE program is just a small piece of the entire funding portfolio for the University of Georgia. So it takes several months for a grant project to be officially executed once the subaward is signed and contracted for that whole process to be complete. All projects officially start on September 1st. You can start your grant project at that time, but you would not be able to submit invoices for reimbursement until your project is officially contracted with the University of Georgia. On the financial management side of a grant project, we allow no cost extensions. So if you are working on a project and your project ends, but you've had a delay in your work for whatever reason, or if you've had a key personnel leave and you need to replace that person, or if you've had, like with the situation with COVID, we had a lot of delays related to COVID. App, Applicants were having trouble completing projects because of the restrictions put on by COVID. Those types of things that we allow no cost extensions for you to be able to extend your grant project to be able to continue your project to be able to complete the objectives. So no cost extensions range between 6 months and a year. We allow budget modifications. So if you find that you are spending more money in one budget category than in another area and you need to move monies, we allow you to move monies from one category. So for example, if you find that you're not doing as much travel as you thought you would, but then you need more materials and supplies to conduct your project, you can move monies from your travel category to your materials and supplies category in order to cover those gaps. We allow for changing of scope or objectives in your grant project. So if you are in the middle of your grant project and you're finding that actually, your objectives is changing, which is actually going to change your whole experimental design and the results of your work, we do allow grant applicants to be able to change the scope or objectives of their project to make those accommodations. And we do allow for a change of PI or graduate students. So like I said earlier, if the graduate student leaves, we do ask that the PI notify us and give us the name of another graduate student to complete that work. And then also too, if the principal investigator on the project is leaving or for whatever reason is not able to be a part of the project anymore, you can select a new PI for that project. We do require reporting requirements for all of our grants, which all the requirements are in the SARE Grant Management System at projects.sare.org. The SARE Grant Management System is your portal for not only applying for a SARE grant, but also for managing your grant if you're funded. So each year that a project is active, we ask for an annual report. And then once the grant project ends, we ask for a final report, which is accumulation of the research that was done and the data and the findings and how those findings can be applied in the real world with regards to sustainability. And then we also have what are called project products, which are educational tools and resources that can be developed as a result of your grant project. So things like publications, video series, webinars, conference posters, those would be considered project products, and they are added to your project so that folks who go to the database and read more information about your project can see those project products and then use that information to their benefit. So that's all I have. If you have any questions after today's Q&A session, I'm available by email at cpollock@uga.edu. Or you can call me directly at 770-412-4786. I can ask questions or provide guidance or any other types of information that anybody would need. So, and I'm open to answering any questions for the remainder of the time that we have.
Okay, Candace, thank you so much. I just put in the chat the link to the call and the email address that they can direct to learn more specific questions. So that's in the chat. And there was one question that came in through the Q&A thus far. It says, if we are planning an on-farm research experiment for this summer, can expenses from this summer be included in the SARE grant budget and reimbursed with the start date of the grant?
No. Yeah, so that was the one thing I didn't mention, and I'm glad that question was asked. Any expenses that are incurred related to a project prior to the September 1st start date is not reimbursable. So if you are working on a project and you have to spend money on the project prior to you being funded a graduate student grant and prior to the project starting September 1st, any of those expenses are not part of the grant funds themselves and cannot be reimbursed.
All right. So anyone else that has a question, you can, I'm going to open up the, actually, it's probably better that we, since there's over 70 people on, that we do it through chat. Just, you could either put your question, or if you want to speak it, just say I have a question, and then we'll go ahead and unmute so that everyone isn't unmuting at the same time. And if there are any other links and things that you need in the chat, you can request those as well. Okay, Megan asked, if I graduate before the project has ended, but remain at the institution as a postdoc, am I able to remain on the project? I see your question, Brennan. We'll come to you next.
Yeah, good question.
And if we don't have the answer right now, go ahead and throw your email address in, and we'll definitely research it and get back to you.
Yeah, let me research that one because yeah, that's a new one. Yeah, I'm trying to think if we ever had a situation where if we had a graduate student who graduated before their project ended.
Okay.
I would,
And
I would say, I would say yes, that would be allowed. Um, yes, and you would just be finishing up the grant as a postdoc rather than a graduate student. I would say that would be okay.
okay. Can you see the questions as well? I'll read the next one. Olamide Olawoyo, can the project or research be conducted in 2 states within the southern region? I'm assuming he says within the region.
You mean splitting your research project between one state and another state? Or involving two different universities?
I'm thinking we should let him respond.
I mean, I mean, if you're at a university, let's just say, University of Mississippi, let's say, and you're wanting to conduct your research project in Mississippi and then also have a part of your research project, let's say in Alabama, the answer to that question is yes.
Okay. Let's see, is another question. I see comments from Jim Moore. Let me get to this other question and then we can come back to those. Do letters of support from local farmers help in the application process?
Yeah, we don't require letters of support, and I really don't think that they have that big of a bearing on funding decisions. So I mean, you can provide them, but they're not necessary.
Okay, here's another question from Journey. Is there any specific page limit, word counts, or font size?
Font size, well, I mean, font 12 point is acceptable. There are word limits to the sections, so you do want to be careful of how you really want to have your pretty tight, succinct writing. Yeah, there are word limits to the different sections of the proposal. If you feel, and I will say this though, if you feel like you need more room, once you run out of space with your word count, there are sections that allow you to attach documents and you can attach additional documentation. The big thing that I have with graduate student grants is they want to list more citations than we have a word limit for in that section. So I just tell them attach a PDF document with your additional citations to that section. The sections allow you to attach photos. They allow you to attach tables and graphs. They allow you to attach videos, any other kind of supporting documentation that will help strengthen your proposal. You can attach to those specific sections.
Okay, Olamide clarified and said that the question was about from the same university, but that the study will cover two states within the southern region. Are there any concerns or anything with that?
No, that's fine.
All right. What else we got? Carlos, if a graduate student is assigned a grant from a different student, can they still apply for their own grant during their program?
Okay,
Does not need clarification?
yeah,
Carlos, yeah, you may want to unmute. Carlos, can you go ahead and unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I was wondering if, for instance, a student had to graduate and they couldn't finish their project, and if someone else is assigned that project as a new grad student, can they still apply for a grant on their name, like with a different project?
I would say yes, that they can. Yeah, because they finished up a graduate student grant from another student who didn't complete it, and then I would say yeah that graduate student would also be allowed to apply for a graduate student grant for their own research project. Yeah, that would be fine.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, and there are actually a few questions that are in the Q&A. I'm monitoring both guys, so I got two sets of eyes, but one at a time. So let me read the last one from in the chat, and then I'll go to the Q&A. Jimmy Robinson in the chat. Would a project that analyzes a failed sustainable ag initiative be a fit for this opportunity?
A failed sustainable ag initiative.
Does that need clarification?
Oh, so so are you talking about? Let's see here. So you're talking about identifying a sustainable ag, taking something that wasn't sustainable or was deemed not sustainable in another area, and then applying sustainable ag principles to that initiative to revisit it. Is that I'm not sure if that's the how I'm thinking of it properly. Yeah, I mean, if is that Jimmy? If Jimmy can provide us some clarification on that, that would be helpful.
Yeah. So I was thinking of an initiative. I didn't want to reveal too much about the specifics right now, but where there was an attempt at creating this sort of sustainable ag organization, and it did not work, especially at like a social community level. And so, would analyzing this failed initiative, sort of this retrospective analysis, be a fit for this grant, or does it need to be something that's more about implementing like, because something like this could have recommendations for sustainable initiatives in the future, but it would be more from looking at that failed initial effort.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah, so it's sort of like a case study sort of situation. So, is that what I'm thinking? It's a social science project, right?
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's one thing I did fail to mention to the participants on the call today is that we do encourage social science projects with graduate student grants. So yes, absolutely, yep.
Okay, and before we go on to the questions that are typed into the Q&A area. Could you repeat the response to Olamide's question in terms of the same university, but the study covering two different states? Because I think he got disconnected and came back in.
Yeah, that's allowable. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, if he's at one university, but he's doing a research project into two different states, that's fine.
Okay, great. So Shivakumar, I see that you have a question in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and read these 4 questions that were put in the Q&A that I had neglected by only looking at the chat first, and then I'll come back to yours. Christopher asked, can a dissertation serve as the final report for the project?
No, it cannot.
Okay. If there's a follow-up, Christopher, go ahead and type something. Someone asked, how difficult is it to be awarded a grant if you are a grad student at a university outside of the South, but you are conducting research / partnering with a PI at a land-grant university in the South?
Yeah, I get this quite a bit, actually, more so now than we used to in the past. And unfortunately, the graduate student grants for the Southern region are designed for students in the South. And the reason why we say that is because, like I mentioned earlier, the funding, if awarded, the funding goes to the university. It doesn't go to the graduate student. So every SSARE region offers graduate student grants. So wherever you're at in your university, I encourage you to look up the graduate student grant information in that particular SSARE region, and look into the idea of applying there. Now, I'm not really sure, like if you're at a university outside of the Southern region, but your research is just Southern based, I don't know. I don't even know if you would even qualify for those grants. That would be something that you'd have to look into and ask in that particular SSARE region. So yeah, I mean, I know it's not the most ideal answer, but yeah, no, the Southern SSARE graduate student grants are for students enrolled in universities in the Southern region.
And the main thing with that, I remember speaking about this at a conference when we were tabling, the funds have to be used in the South. But if the graduate student applies outside of the South, those funds have to be sent to their institution, which would not be in the South. So not sure how to get around that. If that's the case, that might take a lot more consideration. Because the same thing would be for the other region. The funds would be coming to them, but if the student is trying to spend the funds in the South, there's another conflict there. So I could see that big question mark, not sure. Let me get to the other question. You might want to email that because we don't have a straightaway answer for that other than what we just shared. And I don't know what the solution would be. 2 more questions in the Q&A, and then I'll go back to the one in the chat. How difficult is it to be awarded a grant if you are, oh, actually, that's the same question that was just answered. I apologize. So that one's done. And the last one in the Q&A is, can I incorporate the data or results obtained from the experiments conducted in the previous season of 2023 into the project proposal to provide a more comprehensive and meaningful explanation?
Absolutely. And we encourage that. So if you already have preliminary data on a project that you're working on, we encourage the students to include that preliminary data in their proposal to help strengthen their proposal.
And that actually was the question that was in the chat by Shivakumar. So at this point, there aren't any others. Is there anything else that someone would like to share or say? Because if not, we have reached our hour time, which was the goal, and we can wrap it up. There is one question that just came in. Robin Cheek says, I did not realize the webinar started in Eastern time zone. Oh, so this is a good question to finish with, Robin. Everything is being recorded and will be shared. It's also live on Facebook on our Southern SARE Facebook page. So you want to go and follow that. You'll have access to that more immediately. But we'll also be uploading it to our other platforms, YouTube and Vimeo. Everything is Southern SARE online. So wherever you do things online socially, at Southern SARE, SARE, is where you could find us. No spaces or anything.
Yeah,
So hopefully that's helpful.
Brennan said he had a question, Dara.
Oh, Brennan, if you're ready, you can help us wrap it up.
Yes, it's not so much a question, Candace. I know you just finished wrapping up reviews of last cycle's grant applications. And if you can just mention one or two projects that got funded so folks have a real-time idea of the type of projects that SARE is funding, that'd be great.
For the graduate students?
Yes.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Okay.
I have to look it up real quick.
And for those who want to be able to search the other projects, I'll go ahead and throw the link for that in the chat. And that way you can go ahead and search on our website previous projects that were awarded. So that will be coming into the chat just momentarily. If there are any other questions regarding what you can access on our website, let me know in the chat. I'm going to close the Q&A for now for this session. And if you ask anything else, I'll throw the links that are on our website into the chat. So I'm going to go get that one so that you can do our project search. We also have educational resources that are free. You can download them, PDFs and so on. So I'll throw a link to that in there too. And if you just go to our website, southernsare.org, and remember, SARE is SARE, you can just find all this stuff on your own. But I'm going to throw our link tree in here that will help you kind of pinpoint some of the other things and take you to the website a little easier. But I'm going to put both the website, and for those who prefer the link tree, you'll have that as well. They all lead to the website anyway.
Okay, so we had 23 projects in 2023 that were funded. So these are just some of the topics that were funded, just to kind of give you an idea. We had a genetic study on identifying sources of southern pea with high nutritive value. A irrigation project related to cotton during drought conditions. Project on gastrointestinal functionality and immune status of goats. Breeding Cura clover as a living mulch. This is a grassland and ecosystem project on the application of waste milk on reclaimed grassland, CRP land. IPM project on native wildflowers to promote bee pollinators. A horticulture project on planting density to increase the sustainability of blueberries. A organic wheat soybean double cropping system. IPM project on ambrosia beetles. Let's see here. So a social science project on indigenous cultural methods of Puerto Rico. It's a food sovereignty project. Let's see, disease management project on peaches. Let's see here. I'm just reading the headlines real quick. Cover crops on water repellency and sustainability in U.S. soils. Intercropping cassava and legumes for food security in Florida and Puerto Rico. Let's see here. Yeah, genetic analysis and breeding tools for sustainable management of disease outbreaks in strawberries. Social science project on documenting the lived experiences of African immigrant farmers in the United States. Heat stress and their influence on annual crops and pollinators. So this is a climate risk project. And locally sourced biochar and poultry litter, combining the two to improve soil health, to more sustainably produce tomatoes in Georgia. So those are just some of the projects that were funded last year.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw this last link in the chat. It shows you the different states and territories and allows you to know what's happening with SSARE in your state.
Anybody have any other questions?
And for those who are watching on Facebook, we'll be sharing these same links in the Facebook link as well.
Well, thank you so much for listening. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to just give me a call or send me an email.
And definitely visit the website for more information, southernsare.org, southernsare.org. And again, you can follow along with the website. Someone's asking if I could share the Facebook page link. Sure, I'll do that. But actually, I'll just share our Facebook page in general because it's the first thing when you get there. So facebook.com/SouthernSARE. So there it is in the chat. You can follow that and it'll be the thing that's live right now. So again, Southern SARE, all of our platforms are like that. So same thing with Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and LinkedIn as well, for those of you that utilize that. Southern SARE. So thank you all again. Please do share this with other students and potential advisors at your universities, master's students, PhD students, and if you know some undergrads that are preparing to get into the master's program, you can share it with them as well, because then it'll give them a head start into thinking about their grant program, and then they can be ready to apply earlier rather than wait until when they get into their graduate program. So thank you all again. We appreciate you all for taking the time to come to this webinar on our Southern SARE Graduate Student Grant Program for 2024. Deadline is in May to apply, so you have a little time to think about some things, but we know how fast time goes. So do your best and reach out to us. The email address is southern-gs for graduate student @sare.org. So that's southern-gs @sare.org is who you can email. And we just ask that you exercise your patience, as it's one grant manager responding to all of the emails that come in, but you will get responded to. So thank you again, and we appreciate your time. Sorry, one last thing. Someone just wanted to be sure about the font size and word limit. They just threw that in there.
Oh, yeah. 12-point font size is fine. There are word limits to each of the sections, so that is all laid out in the call for proposal. Yeah, there are word limits for each of the different sections. And then if you need additional space, once you hit your word limit, you can attach additional documents to those sections.
Okay, and very important to note, the link that most of you have access to with the call, people sometimes don't understand where to go to apply. So I'm throwing those links in as well. You would have to create an account in our grant management system in order to actually apply. So all of those links are also now in the chat. All right. You all take care, and we'll see you all for another one of these next year. Some of your schools may be coming to. If there's anyone in Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands, please let me know. Definitely trying to raise the numbers of those who have not been made aware in the past. And before you all go, if you could just throw in the chat which school you're from or which state or territory you're in. Please put the email ID as well. You want the email address again. There you go, no problem. Southern-GS for graduate student at SSARE.org. All right, Baton Rouge, University of Arkansas, Clemson University, nice. Clemson, Kentucky State, Texas Tech, North Carolina State, North Carolina A&T State, UAPB, I don't know what that acronym stands for. Pine Bluff, gotcha. University of Georgia. Okay, anyone here from Puerto Rico? I'm very curious. We'll be going to Puerto Rico today to do a presentation at the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. And again, we can't do this everywhere, but we're definitely trying to hit those places that either have never received a graduate student grant or only have like 1 or 2 or under 5. So Virginia Tech, all right. Okay, thanks you all so much, and you all enjoy the rest of your day. This has been a Southern SSARE Graduate Student Program webinar conducted by Candace Pollock-Moore, your grant manager for this specific program. And we look forward to your proposals.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.